On January 24th, 2023, police would receive a call from a witness reporting a woman who jumped from a second-story window. But when police would arrive on scene, they would find even more disturbing events inside the home. Let's talk about it. Yes, we are talking about Lindsay Clancy. Lindsay was born on August 11th, 1990, and she grew up in Wallingford, Connecticut. She worked as a labor and delivery nurse for about 9 years, and she married Patrick Clancy in December of 2016 after they had been dating for about 3 years. They ended up having 3 children: Cora, who was born in December of 2017, Dawson, who was born in September of 2019, and Callan, who was born in May of 2022. Those who knew Lindsay before these tragic events would take place would describe her as a very devoted mother. She was the type of mother who centered her life around her children. She decorated her home with tons of pictures of her children. She loved being around them, and her friends would say that she would even leave social events early so that she could get home to be with her kids. So based on these accounts, it's really hard to say that she was the type of mother who did not enjoy motherhood and who did not take very good care of her kids, because she did. However, there was a major change in Lindsay after her last child, Callan, was born. So, like I mentioned, Callan was born in May of 2022, and shortly after he was born, Lindsay started to experience significant psychological challenges. She was having anxiety, insomnia, intrusive thoughts, and exhaustion. But her severity and combination of these symptoms did not fall in line with simple, ordinary postpartum exhaustion. It was something terrifying, and it was something clinically serious. By the fall of that year, her mental health had deteriorated so much that she began seeking professional help. She saw several mental health providers and was prescribed a succession of various medications: Zoloft, Prozac, Ativan, Seroquel, and several others. This myriad of prescriptions led to a very complicated regimen, and it's believed that the medications themselves worsened her condition. Lindsay was not only seeking help from medical professionals, she was also seeking help from those in her life. Her mother-in-law would say that she was very open with her struggles and did ask her for support. Lindsay would verbalize her fears of developing a dependency on benzodiazepines, but at the same time, she couldn't sleep without taking them. Her mother, Paula Musgrove, would stay with Lindsay very often in the months between October and December of 2022, and she would say that Lindsay was terrified of sleeping alone, and she was becoming increasingly more and more paranoid, believing that the medications were destroying her mind. Lindsay's sister, Allison Osga, would also report that by December of 2022, Lindsay had confided in her and told her that she had been experiencing severe self-unaliving thoughts every single day for a month. She even told both her husband and her mother-in-law that she was having very concerning thoughts about harming the children. So on top of seeking professional help, getting on medications, confiding and seeking support in those around her, she also checked herself into a psychiatric hospital where she spent several nights at an inpatient location because she was so concerned about these thoughts that she was having. However, witnesses would say that Lindsay did not always take her medications as prescribed, and she did not always follow all of the advice that these medical professionals were giving her. While reviewing cell phone records, her attorneys pointed to internet searches that were made regarding children, caring for children, playing with children, including purchasing a trampoline, kids movies, and she was also searching for mental health disorders and medications. She was searching for things like schizophrenia, hallucinations, bipolar disorder, and psychosis. So now that we have some background information, I am going to tell you the events that happened on January 24th of 2023, starting at 8 a.m. So at 8 a.m., Patrick stayed home with Callan and Dawson while Lindsay took Cora to a doctor's appointment. Patrick would say that Lindsay and him were texting back and forth the whole morning, sending pictures of the kids to each other, having normal, regular conversation, and he did not notice anything in their conversation that was cause of concern. Lindsay eventually came back home from the appointment, and Patrick would go downstairs where he would work from his basement office. Lindsay stayed upstairs and spent time with the kids, and Patrick reported that Lindsay was happy and in a good mood, and this was one of the best days that she has had in a while. So with these reports, the prosecution is arguing that Lindsay was a fully functional mother and she was fully engaged with her children the day of the unalivings. But the defense would argue that a person experiencing psychosis is not necessarily psychotic every second of every day. Meanwhile, and we now know this, but Lindsay was searching additional things on her phone the day of the unalivings. And this is where things start to get more interesting and a little bit confusing, because her searches did not paint a picture of a person who was planning these crimes. So Lindsay had searched for Miralax, which is a stool softener, and she was searching for it for Cora. She even called her local CVS to inquire about the medication to see if it was appropriate to give to Cora. And she also searched up 3V restaurants, and she looked up the directions on how to get to the restaurant from their house. And this is important because this is what gets Patrick out of the house. So Lindsay would call 3V to place a pickup order for food, and the employee who had answered the phone and spoke to Lindsay and took her order would report that Lindsay sounded completely normal and there was nothing off or strange about the way that she was communicating. So Patrick leaves, and Lindsay also tells him to stop at CVS to get the stool softener for Cora, and he would say that, again, their communication, the way that she was acting, everything seemed normal. But when Patrick got to CVS, he couldn't find the specific Miralax that Lindsay wanted for Cora. So he would give Lindsay a call to see if an alternative would work, and she said yes. But when he was on the phone with her, he described her as being quiet and busy, but he assumed that maybe she was just giving the kids a bath. And here is where the prosecution is arguing that Lindsay was in her right mind, she was coherent, and she was able to answer the phone and have a coherent conversation regarding medication and alternatives. But the defense, on the other hand, argued that just because Lindsay was described as being quiet and busy does not give us a full picture of what is going on inside of her mind psychologically. Patrick then arrives at 3B, he picks up the food, and he heads back to the house, which is about a 10 or 15 minute drive away. Patrick would arrive home shortly after 6 p.m. and he said that when he entered the house, something felt off, something felt wrong, and the house was eerily quiet. He would put everything down on the kitchen island and called for Lindsay, but got no response. So he called her phone, but she didn't answer. He first went upstairs to check the master bedroom, and the door was locked, which was odd because it was never locked. He knew where a spare key was, so he got the spare key, he unlocked the door, and as soon as he opened the door, he saw blood. And the bedroom window was open. He took a couple steps in and noticed immediately what had happened. So he ran out the room, ran downstairs, ran into the backyard, and that is where he found Lindsay on the ground outside. She was suffering from very serious injuries. She had cut her wrists and her neck, and when Patrick asked her what happened, she told him that she attempted to unalive herself and the kids were in the basement. But she never told him that the kids were harmed or that the kids needed medical attention. So when he went to the basement to get the kids, you can only imagine the shock and horror that he must have felt in that moment. Patrick called the police, and Cora and Dawson would pass that evening, and Callan was transported to the hospital where he survived for only 3 short days afterwards. Lindsay did survive her attempt but sustained catastrophic spinal cord injuries, leaving her paralyzed from the waist down. Lindsay's pleaded not guilty to the crimes that she committed on the reason of insanity. And if she's found guilty, however, she will face charges up to life in prison without parole. But if she's found not guilty due to lack of criminal responsibility, she would be committed to a state mental health facility. And of course, this trial is still ongoing. Her defense attorneys are claiming that she was experiencing severe postpartum psychosis, but she did everything in her power to receive the help that she needed. But the mix of medications seemed to have made her condition worse. And there are some reports that some of the medications that she was on was not appropriate for those with bipolar disorder, which is one of her diagnoses. On the other hand, the prosecution is not denying that she was experiencing psychological issues, but she had access to a range of mental health providers, and she did not always follow the advice of these medical professionals to a T. And the medical professionals who have testified would say that Lindsay never spoke about a plan of harming herself or her children to them. And they also claim that she did not show any signs of psychosis and mania, but they did admit that Lindsay was having self-unaliving thoughts because this is something that she reported to them. So is Lindsay criminally responsible for her crimes? That is the question the jury ultimately has to answer. But for now, I'd love to hear your thoughts.